can you get that kind of money? He's using your house like his own piggy bank. You ought to know by now. You can pay off your house here in Illinois, but you can never keep up with the taxes. Oh, how it's always been the plan to have a taxpayer pay, no doubt. Not a matter of if anymore, but when you're moving out. I said, when you're moving
Dan
out.
and Amy, it's that time of the week for our conversation with Ted Dabrowski, the president at Wirepoints, wirepoints.org, all things policy related in Illinois. And Ted, before we begin with politics and policy in Illinois, Ted Dabrowski.
Yeah.
Ted Dabrowski.
Bad boy Ted Dabrowski.
You know, this
What's coming? What's coming?
Well, this
I know. I don't know either, Ted.
This is not going to help the Polish jokes. Poland sends 6 swimmers home from Tokyo after selecting too many athletes to compete in the games by mistake. The Polish Swimming Federation selected 23 athletes for the games where only 17 are allowed to participate.
Ruh-roh, what happened, Ted?
It reminds me of the old Polish joke. I'll risk my career here with the Polish joke.
All right. Hopefully this is funny, unlike your other jokes.
Well, this is an old one. 747 crashes into a Polish cemetery. So far, Polish authorities have recovered 2,000 bodies. Zing. Thank you.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, would you like to, offer some defense for your motherland?
I won't offer defense. I just used to tell Polish jokes all the time when I was young, so this just adds fuel to the fire.
All
Have
right.
you ever heard that joke before, Ted?
I'd never heard that one.
Do you think it's
He's heard
funny?
all the others.
Or do you find it offensive?
Yeah.
Oh, I love, I like offense, so it's okay.
Everybody should be ridiculed. That's myself included. That's my mantra.
Exactly.
Speaking of ridicule, Jelly Belly, he's this heaving hog of life that occupies the governor's mansion in Illinois. He announced yesterday, to no one's surprise except Amy Jacobson, that he is running for re-election.
Do you want to hear a little bit of it?
I'm sure. Just a little, though.
Okay, just a little for a big
morsel.
guy.
Yeah.
When I ran for governor 4 years ago, I could not have imagined that I would end up leading the state through a global pandemic. Look, I may not have gotten every decision right,
But I love you.
but at every
And
step
love
along
me.
the way,
Please
I
love
followed
me.
the science.
And then he
focused.
And then he what?
Then he ripped off his shirt and made love to the camera like an animal, Ted.
Man, well, no surprise he's running. I think the stars have aligned for him. He's got peace in his legislature, which he's done well to work well with them, passing all the things they've passed. He's got good news on the credit upgrades. He's got $150 billion from the federal government, so it's all aligned for him. And it's easy for him to keep moving forward. He's got pretty decent numbers, so it's going to be a big challenge to take him down.
Well, the entire 3-minute video, centered on the pandemic and nothing else that happened during his first term in office.
And it was only 3 minutes because then the microwave went off and he had to leave.
But if we go back and we roll back, or re-implement some of these mask mandates and lockdowns, that's not going to help him politically.
Well, I think, Dan, I was listening to you guys, you and Amy, talk about the Republican Party, and is there any chance? Is there any competition? Is there any alignment? Well, there may not be, but I think this is probably the clearest moment I've seen in a long time for delineation between bad policy and good policy. We could call that Republican versus Democrat, but certainly good policy versus bad policy. And let me see if I can rip off a few. One side closed schools, the other side wanted to open schools. One side wanted to put the teachers' union first. The others wanted to put students first. One side wanted to defund the police. The other one wanted good police. One wanted lockdowns. One wanted reopenings. One wants critical race theory. The other one wants critical thinking. One thinks that criminals are victims, and the other one thinks criminals are criminals. It's a huge delineation of policy and direction. But I think only one side can verbalize it.
Yeah, you should think about maybe trying to get an audience with whatever constitutes the Republican Party, because they clearly need the messaging help, and that about boils it down, doesn't it? You have to be willing to take up these fights, and again, there just doesn't seem to be much appetite, because there isn't much evidence that these fights are going to be taken up by anybody in any serious fashion.
Well, what's interesting is the press doesn't give it much attention. Pritzker's done a great job of shutting down the carnival barkers and having the media, get in line. And I think that the facts are out there. I mean, they're fascinating facts, and the data is excellent. But does anybody have the wherewithal to really push and fight and make noise and have the money too, which is another big thing, given that Pritzker, can put in $170 million or whatever he wants to put in, like he did last time.
Yeah, but there are diminishing marginal returns to money. If you're doing something interesting, the money will come to get your message out.
Agreed.
I mean, again, too, you mentioned the issue of crime and the non-prosecution, particularly of repeat violent offenders. As CWB Chicago reporting just yesterday, as the Loop prepares to break annual shooting record, and they talk about some of the more recent gunfights and gangland shootings, including the gangland shooting where 4 young women were injured over the weekend. This becomes a state issue, too, because Chicago and the state are so inextricably linked. This seems to be something that could be leveled up for a statewide conversation and not just in the form of, gosh, have you heard what's going on in Chicago? That place is up for grabs. A little bit more than that.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, if you look at the suburbs, right? I mean, you could even extend it there where people are scared. One side is people are scared to go into the city now. So it is a suburban issue. Then you got places like Harvey, which are reaching record numbers. Galesburg the other day announced that they have record murders. This is everywhere, and a lot of it has to do with the new law that was passed that basically, makes crime, I'd say, easier, or makes policing harder. People want more policing. People want more protection. Of course, the other side says that's not true, and I think that, again, it just opens up the door to, 1, to great messaging, and 2, to better policy. I mean, I think the politics and the policy really line up here.
And they're not going to prosecute you in Chicago unless, it's $1,000 or more.
Well, yeah, I mean, I still find fascinating the 64 shots that were fired just outside the courthouse, or whatever it was, the jail.
Yeah,
the
rapper.
boldness.
Yeah,
apparently he was targeted, according to the Tribune's reporting.
It was so obvious he was targeted. But yes, the 65 rounds were fired.
Yeah,
That's
it's a rumor that he
war.
was targeted.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
You think he was?
Yeah. So let's talk about schools here, since that seems to be where, if there's any activity going on, it's around schools and what school policy is going to be come the fall, come next month, really.
Yeah.
And so U46, which is the second biggest school district behind CPS in the region, and is also a disaster, terrible school district, awful school district. I feel bad for the parents relegated to, and the students relegated to that school system. They wouldn't allow parents into the meeting to talk about mask policy unless they wore a mask. Nice way to sort of freeze out opposition. And so, your recommendation, this is U46, Wheaton, New Trier, all the examples.
Naperville.
What would you suggest, and from what you're seeing and the interactions you've had with school officials where you live, for parents who want to do something to make sure that this school year is more productive than last?
Well, I think the one of U46. I mean, I was seeing the other day in the press, 200 Wheaton. All those parents showed up. Is a big group of parents. I think in a place like U46, which is a massive school district, I would imagine that they could amass quite a few people and hold a rally at this stage. I think the rallies have been pretty powerful, and if they're going to force, when in a situation where so many people are vaccinated now, especially in the suburbs, right? We've got 90% of all adults ages 65 and over with at least one shot. So either the school districts are in support of vaccination or they're anti-vaxxers. They're acting like they're anti-vaxxers. So this is a moment where we have to just rise together, start holding rallies if necessary, and exert pressure. I think there's enough people out there to do it.
And we did last night because they wouldn't even let them in outside of District 46.
Let us in! Let us!
They were wearing all red and they would not let them in. And I just, the problem a lot of parents have with masks is that it's detrimental to learning. And it's needless, and the science and the data isn't there to keep masking our kids for the rest of their lives, it seems like.
Oh, yeah, I think it's absurd. I went to church on Sunday, and, nobody had masks on. Of course, some adults did, whoever wants to, but most people, whatever it was, 90-something% didn't have masks on. But the acolytes, they did. They were forced to have masks on. And it's an absurd policy where the ones who don't get sick. I saw some 2 and 4 year olds on July 4th going to the beach. They were masked. Their parents weren't. It's an absurdity because there is no risk to those kids, and adults who want to be vaccinated are. It just makes zero sense. It's surreal, really.
Speaking of making zero sense, CPS recently unveiled its $9 billion budget for the coming fiscal year. So that's about $28,000 per kid in CPS. That's a lot more than most suburban school districts spend per pupil. And you over at Wirepoints did a little back-of-the-envelope math, too, as to property taxes and spending and K through 12, generally speaking, in Illinois, comparing, states that are run a little bit differently and what that would look like if Illinois was run a little bit differently.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We looked at the U.S. Census at the spending per state, and what we found is that Illinois, and then we'll get to CPS in a second, but Illinois spends about 70% more, $7,000 almost, than Florida, and about $6,000 more than Indiana. So that's a lot of money, and yet their results are actually better. Their outcomes, their national testing scores are better than Illinois. So we're spending massive amounts of money here, and again, the question is for what? Do we know for what? CPS takes it further, right? With all this COVID money coming in, they'll be at $27,000 this year. That, of course, includes capital and debt repayment and stuff like that, but it's a massive number. And we know what's happening is we are empowering, by paying all that extra money, we're empowering the unions. We're paying them a lot more. We're giving them much more. There's much more at stake for them because we pay them so much through their salaries, through their pensions, that they're fighting back, and that's why they're fighting back tooth and nail to keep their control.
And the CTU, I don't know if you saw their list of demands. They want, it's the same old, but they want 4,000 new positions added because they want a piece of the pie, Ted. They want some of these COVID federal funds, and they want to help people in low-income housing to pay their rent and to pay mortgages of people who work for CPS. It's ridiculous.
Well, I like this. This is all temporary spending, as Jim Urio said earlier, right? This temporary becomes permanent, so...
And this against the backdrop, you're talking about the pension benefits, the 7-figure pensions guaranteed, these defined benefit plans. And Illinois' pension system, second worst funded in the nation now?
That's right. New Jersey's the worst, but it's all a matter of how you calculate that. New Jersey and Illinois are both the same bankruptcy level. It's just a competition for worst. No, I think what's interesting about our crisis right now is that all this federal money flooded in. And so all these problems we're having and all these cultural problems are, let's say, somewhat dampened by the fact that there's a lot of money sloshing around to fund them. But, in 2 years from now, when the money dries up, then it's going to be really interesting because we're going to have a fight not only over the culture issues, but who's paying for them, because the taxes are going to go up. And that's going to highlight or heighten the battle. And I think it's going to get interesting then. Even more interesting than it is now.
Well, in 2 years, J.B. Pritzker will be running for president of the United States, so we won't have time to focus on things like the fiscal order of the state of Illinois. But, okay. Yeah, we'll talk to you in 2 years about it. No big deal. Ted Dabrowski, president of Wirepoints, wirepoints.org. Ted, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, I'm Dave Nissen, CEO and president of Mueller CPA. Al Mueller founded our firm over 53 years ago, and we have stayed true to our core purpose of enhancing the lifetime success of our clients through innovative financial accounting and business advisory services. With this client commitment in mind and our focus on global expansion, our partner group has decided to rebrand and change our name